Hey, ladies, if you have always wished that you could work with me personally in a small, intimate setting, I have some great news. For the first time in over a decade, now that things are opening up, I cannot wait to get my hands on you personally. So we have opened up application to our Plug Into Your Superpower retreat to the public. So apply now and see if it's a good fit for you. Just go to datingwithdignity.com/plug-into form. I cannot wait to meet you in person. Again, that's datingwithdignity.com/plug-into form.
You're listening to Life Check Yourself with life coach, transformational leader, and dating and relationship badass, Marni Batista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important life and love issues you want to know about. So if you're ready to life check yourself in your relationships, your career, and the areas of your life that matter most to you, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Life Check Yourself with Kibby McMahon and Jaqueline Trumbull. What to know about dating someone who's struggling with mental health. Ladies, are you ready to life check your damn selves? I am so excited for you for today's show. I have the host of an amazing podcast called A Little Help for Our Friends. I want you to introduce you to Jaqueline Trumbull. First of all, she is the co-host of A Little Help for Our Friends. She's a member of Bachelor Nation. I mean, that's a whole other conversation we could have. And also, she's a current PhD student at Duke and is a soon-to-be clinical psychologist. She has worked in a career so far in research for borderline personality disorder and misophonia. She is super interested in how interpersonal functioning is impacted by personality pathology. Ooh. As well as our favorite emotions we like to talk about on this show, shame, envy, and contempt, which basically is like the whole of the Bachelor franchise. So no wonder. With a mother who was a psychiatrist and personal ties in her family to depression, anxiety, and alcoholism, Jacqueline always had mental health as a prominent subject in her life, and feels like it's the most important work she can do. And also did a career 180 turn, which is amazing, and brought mental health for herself and others to the forefront of her life. And we're so grateful that you did. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. That was quite an intro.
Woo! Okay, well, now you all got to meet Kibby McMahon, who is already a doctor. She's a PhD clinical psychologist. She's a yogi. She co-hosts A Little Help for Our Friends with Jacqueline. And her passion lies with helping people connect more deeply to themselves and others. Interesting, as half Chinese and half white, as well as a native New Yorker, Kibby draws a lot from her multicultural identity, which I'm super excited to talk about, which informs how she sees psychology. She completed her undergrad degree at Columbia and her PhD at Duke. Did you guys meet at Duke?
We did. Yeah.
Whoa, I love that. That's amazing. That's so cool. She's trained in several forms of CBT, such as dialectical behavior therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy. And y'all need that. Interpersonal psychotherapy and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. She studied vinyasa yoga in New York City. She's an instructor. And also grew up, as we all did, seeing what it's like to be trapped in psychological suffering. And she saw firsthand the ripple effect that mental illness can have on the individual and all the people that we love around them. And I'm so happy that you are both here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, your intros, man. I was just spending all morning thinking about how I'm not doing enough. More coffee. I should accomplish more. And I'm like, damn, that sounds pretty good.
It's also, I didn't say this in your bio, Kibby, but what is here in front of me is that you wouldn't be where you are today without the therapist you've been seeing since you were 14. And I have three daughters, 26, 23, and almost 20, have the same therapist and have been seeing that therapist since they were each in their own way, 14, 15, 16. And I think they would say the same thing. And so I just really love to see the back end of that, right? Like really growing up, having support, and now being able to help others through your show and the work that you guys are doing. So yay, therapists who work with young people. Woohoo! Okay. All right. So let's talk about how you came together and decided to become a force in talking about mental health and your journeys, and tell me that story.
Yeah, so I went on The Bachelor, and so I had this following, and it is very popular within Bachelor Nation to start podcasts, most of them dating related. But, when I met Kibby, we just had really strong kind of intellectual chemistry and just had really great conversations. I felt like my brain was kind of activated in ways that I liked when I talked to her. And so we just figured, use that following for good and start this podcast. And then we were trying to think about, what is missing from that sphere, from the mental health sphere. And we decided to really aim our podcast at the friends and family of people who are suffering, because we've both been in this position. We have alcoholism in our family, where we know how the spotlight can be on that person with the disorder, but there's so much collateral damage as well. And also just, really wanting to be able to help your friends and family. And so we decided to join forces.
I love that. And so, were you guys in class together? Was it like a moment? Was it like instant? Or did this idea evolve as you sort of got to know each other?
I'll add in that I was in the program. I was at Duke for a couple years before Jacqueline came in, and I was doing my dissertation on empathy and mindfulness and how people could get connected to themselves and other people. And I also did some work in the program on, with doing workshops with family members and spouses of people with borderline personality disorder. And they were just, they're just a population that's just like hungry for help, right? Like there's so much therapy and resources going to people suffering, but then it's really like a group suffering, right? So I feel like they were like loved ones, like husbands and wives and, parents of people with personality disorders, are just like really dying for help and just more information and just a place to feel heard themselves. So that was always just kind of in the background. And then when Jacqueline applied, during the interview weekend, we chatted a couple times. We chatted on Skype, and then on the applicant weekend, which was a rough time for her, but it was a great time for our friendship because we really did click. It really felt kind of like this amazing moment where not only did we click personally, but I think both of us like to think about people and relationships and how people relate to other people. And it kind of grew organically. I think Jacqueline and I have always had a really nice synergy when intellectual and personal. So, yeah.
I love that. That's so amazing. And it really shows true that when you are in a community and you can be vulnerable in showing who you really are and what you care about, your pain can turn into making such a huge impact. And I think that so many of our listeners, hide that part of their life and feel so in isolation. So I love that you were able to do that and make such a huge impact. So let's talk about mental health. And I want to talk about this idea of being involved in relationship with people that are suffering from mental health, because I think for our listeners, there are a lot of women who would say two things. They grew up in a family of origin with someone suffering from mental health. They went to therapy, they read the book, they have the t-shirt, and they are still attracting people into their lives that put them in the same role that they were in as a child, like a fixer, a mediator, a caregiver. And sometimes that doesn't mean that those relationships can't work. Sometimes it means that they shouldn't work. But what's your sort of point of view on why that happens? And do you automatically run from that? Is there a way to be in relationship with someone who needs support?
So one thing that happens frequently, and this happens in BPD a lot, is the love that you receive as a kid that becomes your narrative for what love looks like. So, even if somebody was abusive to you as a kid, that creates all of these schemas, which are basically like pretty rigid ways of seeing yourself in the world. And so, you may develop these schemas of, I don't deserve any better. This is what love looks like for me. This is how I should be treated. And then when you grow out of your family and you meet new people, you are attracted to people who make you feel the way that love felt to you when you were smaller. So it's very easy to find yourself in these same patterns. And people who love you differently might feel just really foreign to you. It might not make sense to you. Like, why is this person treating me so kindly? Is there something wrong with them? They must not get it.
That happens.
So that can happen all the time. In terms of, can you make that work? I mean, sure. It depends on what the script is. Is this person abusive, or are they just a problem solver?
Well, it's interesting. We have some clients too, and I'd love for you to address this, Kibby, too, is like, they're with somebody who has potential, right? Like, let's say they struggle with alcohol or they have depression and they're aware of it and they want to work on it. And also it causes a lot of challenges in relationships. Do you think those things are like pink flags, red flags, or what would you recommend to someone who's like dealing with that?
Yeah, it's so tough. It's yeah, kind of like what Jacqueline was saying, people who grew up in a certain environment, like let's say someone who a parent was an alcoholic, right? You identify yourself in relation to that, right? So that's why I feel so comfortable growing up and finding similar relationships. We actually talk about this in our podcast episode on codependency, where there sometimes is a draw, like you identify yourself as the fixer, right? The helper, the caretaker, the one who's always like concerned about that person and very oriented to their needs. And so you like look for that, you kind of identify with that and look for that sometimes in adulthood too. But at the same time, there's another piece to it too. And, this kind of answer to your question is, there's also psychodynamic theories, which says like, we're playing out stories that don't feel resolved. So sometimes when we repeat patterns, it's they call it enacting or reenacting, but there's this, you were abandoned or hurt or traumatized in the past with a relationship and you felt out of control. So you try to repeat that in your current life to try to feel in control of it, whether it's to really make it happen and then try to get a different result, or you're just kind of stuck in the past in a way. So to answer that question, I don't know, right? My mom suffered from alcoholism for so many years and then is now fully recovered. So change can be possible. But I think if people are in a relationship just for the potential that it can change, I'm a little bit more on the side of like, let's take a relationship as it is, right? Is this the kind of relationship that you want, assuming that nothing's going to change? And if not, then maybe it's time to step back, do some therapy, do some self-reflection of like, what do you need? What are you getting out of this? Are you trying to make a change that you couldn't see back when you were a kid? Are you trying to fill a void in some way?
Yeah.
If so, then this is not the place, right?
Well, and I think this is a really interesting thing too. And I'd love to hear your points of view on this, is that I think what I see is that ladies sort of make a commitment when they're not really committed, right? Like, I've been dating this guy for 6 months. I've been dating this guy for 9 months, and I realize there's this issue, but we're going to work through it. And it's sort of that question of like, well, if you knew you were signing up for this in perpetuity, right? Like, you still have a choice. And that's when I love you're saying, like, you need to do some self-reflection, because are you just trying to fill the same role that you had when you were younger because it feels comfortable? Like, if you couldn't fix mom, maybe I can fix Jeff.
Exactly. Jacqueline and I both have personal experiences in this. I'm sure everyone has.
Yes.
So no shame in that game.
Yeah. It's just, and I think it's about being aware of it, but then it's about doing something differently. And so that's my next question is, so if you're listening and you're like, girl, I do this, just, same guy, different face. What is something that someone can do to start? What are the questions you ask when you're starting to do that reflection?
Well, I think what Kibby was talking about are two great questions. Am I repeating this because this is what I've known? Am I repeating this because I'm trying to gain power over a situation that I felt powerless in before? I mean, I remember like intentionally dating a womanizer right after a disastrous relationship with a narcissist because I felt in control now and I wanted to win this time. He actually turned out to be a really lovely and committed person. So I was wrong that he was a womanizer. But I mean, you can do that to an extent if you're in control, but it's like, okay, am I using this relationship to solve the past problem? Or am I willing to see who I can become? Because as Kibby was saying, our identities are formed in relation to other people, which means that your identity can change. I mean, it's flexible over time. And so it can be exciting to say, who else could I be? Do I have to be the fixer? Do I have to be the one who puts up with abuse? Or could I be the person who deserves? And so I guess just playing with that and seeing how open you are to change.
I love that you are making this a question, right? Because I think so many people don't realize that they have a choice in sort of like what identity they want to take on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not everything about you is going to change, and it would be scary if it did, but certainly it's something I encounter in clinical work are people who are very, very afraid of what change will mean about who they are. They've been comfortable being a certain kind of person. Like maybe they were super, super conscientious in high school and devoted all their time to studying. And now in college, they want to have some fun. It's like, well, what does it mean if I allow myself to put down the books a little bit? Does that mean I'm changing? It's like, yeah, it might mean you're changing. It doesn't mean that you're going to be completely destabilized. But it's wonderful to find out new dimensions of your personality, who you can be.
Well, especially, in the world that we're in now, like all those things that we thought were creating stability got shaken, like we're in the snow globe. And, it's like, it's starting to settle and you're like, wait a minute, this isn't the snow globe I started in. And it feels scary. And so when you're asking those questions of yourself, how do you create some self-compassion in that journey? Because you said so truthfully, like, we've all walked down that road. What do you recommend for starting to have that self-compassion?
Yeah, that's so hard. It's so hard to do. I think,
Right.
I'm thinking about it the way we would do it in therapy. Identifying the patterns first, just kind of looking over. I mean, a lot of us are used to looking at the situation at hand, right? They're like, oh, the one person I'm with is such a jerk or whatever. But if we really kind of take a step back and look at, okay, what kind of relationships have we had most of our lives? Who were we in those relationships? Right. What are the things that have been common? What are the things that I contributed to all of those? Like, did I select this kind of person? Did I react in a certain way? Like, we're so used to looking at what people did to us. So taking an honest look of like, what was I doing in there? And then having compassion where, we call like validating our emotions, our experiences, but just almost kind of like imagining that a friend is talking to you or a therapist and just say, you know what, that makes sense. Given how you grew up, given what you knew was love or not love, of course, you ended up in a similar kind of relationship, right? And just having compassion that we go to the things that feel familiar, the things that we identify with, the things that make us feel safe. And yeah, just kind of thinking about it like you were talking to a friend instead of yourself, because we could be kind of hard on ourselves.
Yes. And we're so good at being friends to other people, right? Like, especially if you have that nurturing, fixer, caregiving. And then, it's really important to do it with ourselves. Okay. So let me ask you about, this is such a massive topic as our listeners are looking for life partners or wanting to assess partners that they're with. When we talk about this idea that you have about being emotionally bonded and how we can sometimes overlook the big things when we, want to emotionally bond with someone. So can you guys define that for us and what contributes to who we emotionally bond with?
I could jump in. Yeah, that's such a, that's a thinker, because that can mean so many different things. And I think that my first reaction hearing that is, oh, when you feel in love or when you feel that there's trust. So I think that emotionally bonded could mean different things. For me, it's like someone who I can trust, someone that feels like home, right? But I, leaning on the research, there's some research on relationships and what makes relationships and marriages successful. And it's just simply like, who's your good friend? Like how strong is the quality of your friendship, that which is defined by feeling like you enjoy being with that person. Like, do you have fun with them? Do you have similar things that you do together? Do you share life and a reality and values together? And mutual respect. So contempt is one of the biggest detractors from relationship, kind of predicts when things are going to fall apart.
Yeah.
And contempt is like, you see the other person as inferior, or there's like this competition or looking down on each other. And in opposite, successful relationships tend to have a lot of mutual respect. Even though the individuals could be different, have different preferences and quirks and things like that, can you respect each other as equals? So that's what the literature says. But like, when you said emotionally bonded, I just felt a thing. I just felt like, oh, the people I feel at home with. But
well, right. And it can also just be connected to what we're talking about before, right? There can be unhealthy, I suppose, emotional bonding. Jacqueline, what say you on all this?
Yeah, I was going to talk about the unhealthy part of it.
Good.
Or not, or the just maybe not so happily ever after part of it, which is that, at different times in your life, you may emotionally bond to people that fill certain needs that might not be suitable for longevity. I mean, like, for instance, when I was in my early 20s, right, I dated that narcissist. And I think what he filled for me was this need for excitement, for glamour, for feeling like I'm special and above the rules in some sort of way. I think that actually, like, normally when we think about love, it's like oxytocin, serotonin. This was like a dopamine relationship.
Right.
It's like we want instant rewards. We wanted the high highs and even the low lows, they kept me interested, which is more dopamine, right? So it was like, I just wanted to be interested. I wanted to be sort of taken out of myself. And I didn't want, this was all implicit, right? Like I wasn't saying this to myself, but I didn't want the boredom of a relationship. And I'm almost married, so I say that fondly. The boredom is just a pejorative way sometimes of saying the safety, the mundane,
right. The routine.
At that time, that wasn't what I needed. And I think that's fine. It led to me getting hurt, but I don't regret it because I think it also filled, it filled a need for me at the time. And I think, that can edge into more and more unhealthy territory when you are doing, things that Kibby and I were talking about earlier of filling this need of wanting to reenact something from before. If you are looking from, let's say you had a poor relationship with your father, maybe who's controlling and validating, whatever, and then you look at this new partner and it's this feeling of like, I need that love that I didn't have from my father. This is filling that need. And you're always just trying to kind of extract it from this new iteration. So it just depends on what is kind of most calling you to act. And I think that's really important to get introduced to, is like, what is my brain and body and heart really calling me to do? Is that a long-term love relationship or is it something else?
I think that's so interesting.
I almost would think that feeling with the kind of relationship you're describing, Jacqueline, is like this feeling of infatuation or like it's like an addiction, right? It's this longing, it's this, you might feel like you're emotionally bonded, but it's just heightened emotions, a heightened like fixation on that person. And, actually in those situations, people are bonded through the negative emotions, right? Like the fights, the uncertainty, the jealousy, right? And so that's we wouldn't necessarily say it's bonded, but it just definitely feels emotionally intriguing
and familiar.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Oh my God. I want to ask you so many questions. I literally was like, wow, how did it already be 23 minutes? Okay. Cause I'm like, I want to ask you a million things. Okay. Let's talk about this, Kibby. So I know that you research in your work and both of you talk a lot about regulating your emotions. And, I was writing an essay about the emotional intelligence of women and how, as children, and I think I interviewed a woman named Tess Brigham who works with millennials and Gen Zs. And she was saying, they can say all the right buzzwords like, I was triggered and they have the therapist and all those things, but they're not able to regulate their emotions. And of course, depending upon when you're listening to this, we have the famous Will Smith slap, right? Where like bro can't he's like angry, fair, like walks up, slaps Chris Rock. If you've been sleeping under a rock, maybe you didn't know about it. But so I think that's what happens. People are dating and they send that text that's 15 inches long, or they, or they have these highs and lows. Like, he loves me, he ghosted me. What are some ways that we can start to do some of this work around regulating our emotions rather than just numbing them out, pushing them away, overworking, etc.?
Oh my gosh, great question. I think that we come from a background of dialectical behavior therapy, which is kind of therapy for emotion regulation. And I think in general, the way we think about it like this, happiness and living a meaningful life is living in accordance with our values. What does that mean? Oh, that takes a whole other explanation. But thinking about what kind of person do you want to be? What kind of life do you want to live? Do you want it one of honesty or adventure or integrity and loyalty, being a great mom to not only biological children, but otherwise, right? Thinking about the overall, what do you want your life and yourself to look like? And then with emotions are things, they're processes inside the body that make us move towards things that serve needs in our environment. So if someone hurts me and I need to be protected, I get angry, right? If I did something wrong or something that I think is wrong, I feel guilty, which motivates me to fix it, right? So these emotions are moving us around, making us do things, making us satisfy needs. And sometimes we got to really think carefully about how do we want to move and satisfy these needs in ways that are in line with our values, right? If someone hurts me and my value is to live honestly and true to myself, then I might have to say something to that person and stand up for myself, right? If it's all about justice and I'm a big justice warrior, I might want to start a cause and and start getting and channeling that anger that way. Will Smith, I mean, oh gosh, I don't know what his values are. But he's trying to protect his loved ones, but also probably be a role model for people. Is that slap in line with that? I don't know. That's for him to decide.
Exactly.
I would say no, because can you protect your loved ones that doesn't involve violence, which is actually what his movie was all about.
Right.
I don't know. But those are the kind of questions we could act on our emotions all different ways, but what ways can we act on it in line with our values? That's how we kind of think about it.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple things. One way that I'll sometimes ask those questions are, what would make you proud of yourself? If you look back on this moment, what would make you proud of yourself? Another thing, and this I remember was something I clung to with dating when I was dating, is that inaction can be an action. Not sending the text,
yes,
that's an action, that can propel, that has effects on the environment too. If you're just why won't he text me back? I need to know, and I need to know what's going on. Well, sending that text might push him further away. Not sending that text might invite him back. So if you can wrap your head around this, inaction is a choice. It is an action. It has its own effects. And third, you're asking about trigger warnings or mentioning that. I worry that there is we talk a lot about mental health, on social media these days, Gen Z is very involved in mental health, but I fear that there is an implicit kind of reaction to emotions, that negative emotions are bad.
Yes. Yeah.
You shouldn't be feeling them. And that's not ideal. Like, negative emotions aren't bad. They just tell us to do certain things. Sadness tells us to, slow down, protect ourselves, get support. You know, anxiety tells us caution, okay, approach slowly. I mean, these emotions are important to experience, and it's also really important to learn how to cope with them. And if you cut yourself off before that coping piece, then you're just going to reinforce the idea that the emotions are bad and scary. And so, I don't think trigger warnings are a particularly good idea. I think, maybe in some cases, but I do worry that this is getting reinforced. You shouldn't feel bad.
I love this. So can we just talk about The Bachelor for 1 second?
Sure.
Okay, the use of the word trigger has if you were going to do like one of those people, they go and they count how many times the word is said on a show.
Sure. Yeah, and gaslighting.
Yes, and it's right, and it's like it's the overuse of the word gaslighting, in my humble opinion. But I think this is the thing is like. And I think I really love this message because in dating, like I always tell my clients, like you're opening yourself, you've been in this little bubble and now you're saying like, I'm safe. And then you open it up to literally, as wide as you cast your net, you're going to have some fucking feelings about it. And I think that what happens is people are like, alert, I don't like it, bad, and then they make it be about like, there's no good men or the apps suck or, I'm too much or I'm too big or I'm too small or what, I don't have enough money or I have too much. And we assign meaning to these negative emotions that, aren't accurate. And so I love your message about like, we have to learn how to feel the feelings and manage them, which is part of what you're teaching about regulating emotions, obviously.
Yeah, we do. With dating, so many people talk about how dating is this terrible thing. Actually, Kibby didn't like it very much either, even though she's had so much good luck with it in some senses. But I think there might be an overconcentration on the breakups and the bad and the hurt, and kind of not paying attention to the fun of it all, the excitement, the thrill, and just the amazing experience of falling in love, of making a new connection, of turning people into new friends. There's so much to like, but there's so much resistance to getting hurt that it gets packaged as this big scary thing sometimes.
And what happens if you design your life to avoid hurt, like the illusion of avoiding hurt? What is the like? What's gonna spoiler alert? What happens?
Yeah, we talk about this with our patients all the time because especially with people who struggle with anxiety and depression. A lot of people have narrowed their lives so that they try to avoid all risk of failure, rejection, pain. Right? They don't go out on dates. They don't try for the job they want. And yeah, you're protecting yourself from hurt, but you're also protecting yourself from pretty much everything else. And the real hard part about that is we know this with treatment, with treating someone with anxiety, you got to face your fears and face those things to learn how to cope with them. Yeah. Right. So if you are afraid of failure, well, you're really, and avoid it, you're really missing out on the ability to learn what failure feels like, what it means, and how to overcome it and actually get better at things. So, and with dating, that's even more important because I think people, especially like my younger clients, you kind of treat it like you open yourself up, you put yourself on a profile to be judged as a person, right? And just, are you good or are you bad? Are you attractive or not? And it's like, wow, there's so much growing and learning when you date other people or get to know yourself and have new experiences that like, this is not just a one-stop shop thing. You're not done. We're evolving, and you really cut off the ability to evolve. And that's a huge opportunity wasted.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the work of Reshma Sujani. She wrote Brave, Not Perfect. Yeah.
Ooh, check that out.
Yeah. She's freaking amazing. She founded Girls Who Code. I would love to have.
Oh, yeah.
I would love to have you on my podcast, Reshma. But one thing she talks about is that women, especially, like, we get so focused on our validation, our worthiness coming from our success, that then we strive for perfectionism, and then we don't actually take risk. Right? Because the illusion is, well, I'm only going to be in this realm where I'm perfect. If I'm if I could just do that, then I'm going to be safe. And it doesn't create any sort of sense of fulfillment or happiness, because the bubble ultimately gets, sort of broken. And so what's your sort of rallying cry to women who are struggling with perfectionism and anxiety that comes from trying to be perfect, trying to date perfect, trying to look perfect?
You have to do the opposite. I mean, do something that makes you nervous at least once a week.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, that was a big rule that I lived by for a while. Date somebody who's not your type. You don't have to stay with them, but like a first date, whatever, just do something. Go on a date without makeup. Try a skill that you're probably going to be pretty bad at, and just have the experience of not being good at something. It's fine,
Yeah, I think that if you looking into psychology research, it's shifting from what's called the entity mindset to a growth mindset. So entity is like, I'm good or bad, and the world is basically just going to tell me which one it is. And if you're there, you're never going to try anything, right? You never want to get that, like, the bad feedback. But if you shift to a growth mindset where it's like, I'm engaging with the world to grow and learn and become better and different, then you could apply that to dating. You could apply that to, like, try something new, try something you haven't done before to learn from that. And assume that the first time we do something new, we're going to be bad at it. It doesn't make logical sense to expect to try something for the first time and be perfect at it, right? That's just luck. This is beginner's luck. So go be bad at something, do something out of the ordinary, and learn from it.
I love this. As you tell me this, I'm sitting in an RV. I've been living in it full time with my husband for 10 days. We don't know what the fuck we're doing.
So all about the growth mindset.
Oh my God. I'm like, okay, you signed up for a challenge. This is a challenge. You're failing every day, right? But this is, but it was in alignment. It is in alignment with sort of my desire for new and novel. And it feels scary and horrible and exciting, right? But that's kind of like the journey of seeking what is brave, not necessarily comfortable, because I think what you guys are teaching and what you're talking about in your show is, if you're going to want to, have big love and make an impact, and you're going to be out in the world, then you're going to have feelings. And so we have to understand how to have mindfulness and the things that are going to allow us to regulate those emotions, so that we can make our imprint on the world, instead of just hiding away in fear. And
yeah. Another thing, by the way, if any of your listeners know Paul Bloom, he's a psychologist. He just wrote a book called The Sweet Spot: The Pleasures of Suffering and the Search for Meaning. And the thesis is basically like, human beings, we think we want to be happy, but it seems like what we really want to do is be fulfilled.
Yeah.
If you ask, for instance, new parents, I think, new parents, they've done research showing that new parents are not very happy. They're less happy than non-parents, but they are more fulfilled. And whenever you go after fulfillment, that comes packaged with suffering. Because in order to be proud of yourself, in order to really gain something and grow, suffering is just embedded into that. And so whether that's anxiety about trying something new, criticism because you didn't do it well, or just doing something hard, that's just part of the game. And it actually is good in a certain sense, because the more of it there is, the more potential for growth there is. It's like working out, your muscles rip and get sore before they grow.
Absolutely. Thank you for the free therapy today. I really needed that, ladies.
That'll be $250. Thank you.
Exactly. You are brilliant and amazing, and I would love to be in the I don't know, what do they call the U at Duke, like where the cool kids hang out and like have smart girl conversations.
Well, it's our podcast, really.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I'm gonna become a fan. But you're just totally amazing and such an inspiration and huge role models. And so I'm so grateful to have you here and be on our show. So I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having us. This has been such a great conversation.
Yay. Ladies, you should definitely join me in my fandom. Links to the podcast are absolutely in the show notes. So you want to make sure that you check out the show, which is called A Little Help for Our Friends. I got some today. And while you're doing that, you should get a little piece of paper and pen, and then you can life check yourself, as we like to do here. All right, ladies, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Hey, thanks for tuning into today's show. So if being in an intimate relationship in which you feel 100% seen, heard, and accepted by a high caliber man is a priority for you right now, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working with me and my team at Dating with Dignity, here's what I want you to do. Just head over to DWD VIP, that's D as in dating, W, D as in dating, VIP.com, and book a call to speak with my team. We'll get on the phone with you for about 60 minutes, and you'll get crystal clear on what's stopping you from finding true love right now. We'll also take a look at what you want to create, what you want your whole life to look like when you're able to finally be fully expressed as a woman in a healthy relationship with an incredible guy. And if we can help you get from where you are right now to where you want to be, we will show you the fastest path possible that makes sense for you to do that. We help smart, successful women all over the world solve this one missing piece in their life so they can finally have it all. So to see if we can help you do the same thing, head over to DWDVIP.com. I'm Marni Batista, and let's talk soon.